Hello, everybody. This is the Earful Tower. My name is Oliver G, and today we're going to be talking about Parisian real estate. Sitting across from me is Christine Bacoup-Tidas. How you doing?
Fine. How are you, Oliver?
I'm really good.
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk. I'm excited about this conversation. I want to say it from the beginning that even if you're not thinking about buying a property in Paris, this conversation is going to be about real estate, about Parisian apartments. There should be something in there for everybody. And based on what we were talking about before I press record, it sounds like you know your stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Can we do a little who are you before we get started? The name sounds French-American.
Yes, I am French-American. I basically was born in Paris. My father was American. My mother was French. From Burgundy.
Ah.
Yes, Auxerre.
Auxerre.
Yes.
Is that A-U-X? Is that how you pronounce it? Say it again.
Auxerre.
I thought it was like Auxerre or something like that.
I think people from Burgundy, they pronounce Auxerre. But people from outside, they don't really know.
No.
And sometimes they say Auxerre.
Yeah, I get frightened when I see an X in the middle of a word like that. I don't know what's going on. Okay, and you were born in Paris? In Paris?
I was born in Paris.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a brother. And we're two. He's 3 years younger than me.
Okay, so we got the whole life story there. And then you went to the States. As I understand, you're a lawyer in America.
Yeah, actually, I was a professional dancer, so I took ballet when I was a child. Did a few shows when I was a child. Then moved to New York. I actually danced with Alvin Ailey, a repertory ensemble. And then I stopped dancing. Okay, the Alvin Ailey repertory ensemble in New York. Many years ago. Then, for health reasons, I stopped dancing and decided to just stay in New York to study. So I went to undergrad, Hunter College in Manhattan. Then after that, I went to law school in New York and graduated and then worked there and stayed in New York until 2002. So I lived in New York 16 years. And then moved back to France after 9/11.
Right, okay.
Basically.
And then the natural progression after doing that, coming to Paris and doing more law, would be to get into real estate. Is that what happened?
I worked in law. I was a lawyer for 25 years.
Yeah.
I worked for various law firms, worked in-house for major corporations, specialized in international business, and then compliance, anti-fraud. I was an anti-fraud specialist.
Right.
And I had my daughter. She went to bilingual schools from kindergarten until high school.
Right.
She's 17 years old now. And I met people, parents who came from various countries, Canada, the United States, Australia even. They had their kids in that school.
Right.
And so I started helping them,
I see. So you figured how complicated it is buying a house in Paris, which is something.
Yes.
I mean, I've not bought a house in Paris or an apartment, but I've looked into it. And it doesn't surprise me that people would want to get the help of a lawyer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like a hobby, you know. And then
I know some of our listeners know who you are because one of the Patreon supporters recommended that I got you on for an episode. So people out there maybe people have met you already at this, was it the bilingual school in Paris?
Yes.
Okay, so you get into it, you make a company, you start working as a buyer's agent.
Yes.
And now you help people to buy property in Paris.
From abroad, yes.
Okay, I see. Okay. And the company is called Tomet.
Tomet Paris.
Tomet Paris.
Tomet Paris is the name of my website, and actually, it's going to be a registered trademark.
Okay, cool.
In France.
And a Tomet is a tile from the south of France.
Yes, Tomet is a tile from the south of France. And so you find them in like Provence, but in some buildings, old buildings, 18th century buildings.
Okay.
So yeah, look on.
We'll add a link to it in the show notes as well as a link to your website. But now let's get into property. Let's talk about, I kind of want to talk about property and also, as a sort of guide for this episode, you've come in with a list of sort of 5 or 6 pitfalls that can be useful for everybody. I mean, people have been buying apartments in Paris without the help of a buyer's agent from the beginning of Paris, really, but you're there to help as well. But this episode should hopefully be something for everybody. But something that I've noticed an awful lot when I see, especially online, even for renting, the pictures of the apartments, they can often be so messy, like disgusting, like really unclean. People that you can see the leg of someone sleeping in one of the bedrooms. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but that's a thing, right? I don't know how that would fall into a pitfall, but what's the deal here?
Okay, I guess you will find that more in rental apartments that are rented by anyone, not necessarily going through a real estate agency. So anyone in France can post their pictures of their apartment, and it's not going to necessarily look professional. So you will find that a lot with rentals. Then with like purchase, what I found is that sometimes you will visit, the pictures will be perfect and all of that, right? A real estate agency will handle the sale of that apartment. I will visit it for my buyers. But then the owner will not necessarily will know ahead of time that there will be a visit that day, right? So the apartment
the owner
may be
doesn't
messy.
know that someone's going to visit. The owner
because they leave their key to the realtor. The realtor will call the owner and say, hey, today I have a visit. Can we visit? And, then the apartment may be messy.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the situation that you may find yourself in.
Then is there a pitfall in that? What's the danger?
Okay. It's more like something that you can be surprised, It's not really a pitfall. You may be surprised to find a messy apartment when you visit it. The pitfall is more in the pictures that realtors will advertise, in their listings. You will find beautiful pictures, but they don't look. When you go to the apartment, you're like, oh wow, it doesn't look as good as on the picture.
That's interesting. That's kind of the polar opposite of what happens with renting. Because in the renting pictures that I mentioned and that you just mentioned as well, they can be such average pictures, and then the place can be quite all right. Whereas it sounds like for buying a property, the pictures are so good, and then you have to sort of change your expectations for when you arrive to a...
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they will look like photoshopped, the pictures. They will look photoshopped. Or those pictures, they won't show you what the view is from the apartment.
Yeah, what is the deal with that? Is that for privacy?
No,
like
it's
they don't
just
want
that
you to know where it is or something?
It could be that, but it could be that the view is terrible. It could be facing a wall or nothing interesting, as opposed to if you have an apartment with a beautiful view, usually you will see the view from a picture with a view from the apartment. So basically with listings, you have to read between the lines. Because there's everything that the realtor will want you to know, but you have to guess what is not written. And, that's why using an expert may be useful because I see what's not written. For example, a listing may not indicate that there is no elevator, right? So you're on the 6th floor, beautiful view, right? But there's no elevator. So
I've been there several times. The first house I lived in was 7th floor with no elevator. And now I think that I've got a 2.5-year-old who doesn't particularly enjoy walking upstairs anyway, and then shopping and a stroller. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But if we wind things back and sort of start with at the beginning, budget. Let's talk about budget. When you're you're thinking to buy a place in Paris, you need to think about your budget. You've written here, prepare. I mean, that sounds obvious. What's the risk here? Is it different to in America?
Well, here in France, people are not always prepared, especially in this economical context where banks are not willing to loan money to prospect buyers as much as before because of inflation. It's a good idea. It's a recommendation that I make to see a mortgage broker and make sure of their budget, how much they can borrow.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're rich enough or you have money on the side to buy, without having a recourse to a loan, then it's no issue. But if you think that you will need a loan to purchase, then I always advise people who approach me before I even sign a contract with them to see a mortgage broker to make sure they have a budget and precisely which budget and how much they could borrow. And I work with a very good mortgage broker who works with foreign buyers.
I was going to say, this might sound like a stupid question, but I never even thought about it before. If you're from Australia and you're thinking to buy a place in Paris, do you need to go through French banks, or you can do it with?
You don't necessarily need to go through a French bank,
Yeah.
but I know from American and Canadian banks, they will be reluctant or very reluctant to give you money to buy property abroad.
Really?
This is for security concerns.
But even when I first started looking into buying a place in Paris, which, spoiler alert, I stopped looking into it. So I started and I stopped because I went in there look, we're not really lending money out to anyone at the moment. That's what they said. And I was like, well, how are you meant to get a house? It could be that they looked at my dossier and were like, whoa, avoid this guy. But they just said, this is about a year ago, they said, no, this isn't even a conversation that we're really having with people at the moment. What?
There are banks that are willing to work with buyers from abroad. And that mortgage broker that I work with, they only work with foreign buyers. And they know the banks that will be willing to loan to foreign buyers.
I think that's probably a big part of it, is knowing where to look and who to talk to and not giving up at the first one.
Yes, yeah.
That's the story of my life. So you sort of mentioned this already. Don't take the listings for granted.
Yes.
Do you think that the ads for apartments in Paris are sort of hiding truths, or besides the elevator stuff, is there language to look out for, or are there things that are a bit tricky?
It's more like what is not in the listing.
Yeah.
They will not necessarily tell you about the bar that is beneath you, and it will be open until 2:00 in the morning. They won't tell you about the elevator. Sometimes they specifically indicate there is no elevator. And sometimes they will not say something that is in the bylaws or in the DPE, the diagnostics, about the energy consumption level in the apartment. They will not necessarily, they will indicate the fact that it's F or G, but that's something you need to think about,
right.
An apartment that looks really good and you see F or G. If you're from abroad, you will not necessarily know what that means. But what it means is that if the DPE, the diagnostic, is G, you cannot rent the apartment to someone. You buy it, then you want to stay there for 2 months per year or 3 months and rent it out the rest of the year with a G rating,
you're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to.
Well, do you think that, like, on average, people who are buying a second or whatever third apartment in Paris to have as a backup and then only living there for a couple months a year, do you feel that these kind of people maybe don't need to rent it out? Is that typical that they just have it as a place that they can land, come in and go out again?
It really depends on the buyer, you know. I have clients, they bought a place for like over €1 million, which is a considerable budget.
Yeah.
And they will still want to, for tax reasons, they took a loan, right?
Yeah.
And they prefer to rent it out so it can pay back the loan reimbursement.
But isn't it tricky to rent out places via Airbnb and so on now? It's getting trickier, or is it just a matter of...
Well, Airbnb is a platform, right?
Yeah.
So it's a platform the same way as other platforms. The illegal part, what is illegal in Paris is to rent for less than 30 days.
It's illegal to rent for less than 30 days?
Yes, because it's short-term rental. And short-term rentals, basically, they are prohibited in the building bylaws. In many building bylaws, it's prohibited. And you will usually find that in the old bylaws from the 19th century, there was prostitution back then.
Yeah.
There's still prostitution issues with some short-term rentals, not only Airbnbs. So what is legal is to rent out for at least 30 days.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's interesting. That must be such a hard thing for them to police anyway. And we're getting a little bit off topic, but it's getting into interesting territory for the Olympics. Yes. Do you think, that's going to be mayhem for people renting out their apartments?
Okay, so if you're on your apartment, right, and you want to rent it out during the Olympics, it's your main residence.
Yeah.
You are allowed to rent it out for maximum of 90 days, right?
Yeah.
So you're allowed to do that. The Olympics will only last 2 weeks, and then again 2 weeks in September. So it's no issue.
But what I don't understand that 30 days rental thing that you said. What does that mean? So you can rent it out for...
If it's not your main residence.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
I see. If it's not
because some people buy a place or many places or entire buildings and they rent for like short terms by the night for like €3,000 for like 10 square meters. I'm exaggerating.
Well, that's what I'm hearing about the Olympics as well. People are just going crazy.
Yes.
People are going crazy. Hey, you said you're Parisian. You didn't say you are a Parisian. Someone told me the other day that all the true Parisians will leave Paris for the Olympics.
I will not.
There you go.
I'm going to be a volunteer.
Really?
Yes. I'm going to be a volunteer. And actually, I know other Americans, Canadians, they live here.
Yeah.
They're going to be volunteers.
Christine, that's something we can talk about again maybe when the Olympics gets closer. But let's get back to your list for a second. Do you get tickets or anything when you volunteer?
No.
You don't?
No.
True volunteering then. Okay, that's good. Okay. That's not why I was asking. I wasn't here for the tickets. Negotiation.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to negotiate until the last minute.
Definitely. Negotiate whatever you can, And that's the lawyer part of me, negotiate.
Yeah.
Unlike in the United States, for example, a listed price is the top price. So basically you can negotiate less.
Right.
And I usually try to negotiate less. I find arguments to negotiate less than the price.
So you say, hang on, look, I know that there's going to be, the roof is getting replaced in a year or something.
Yes.
We got to take that into account.
Exactly, yes.
That I can imagine, I can imagine would be a very difficult thing for non-native French people to do. I would find that really hard.
Like renovations, always find something to make it less expensive.
Do you negotiate in daily life?
No.
No? Well, if you rent a car or something and something you don't like the look of it, you're like, I'll give you an extra.
Oh, no. But I like to go on the internet and try to, read reviews and I try to find the best, you know.
Okay. Well, that suits your job then, by the sounds of it. You know what? I think there's a lot of negotiation in French life. I was thinking I delivered books the other day, our children's books, to the Musée d'Orsay. And I always deliver on foot. They don't, because I don't have a truck, you know? And they don't want that many books anyway. And when I rang the intercom, I've done this 5 times, right, on foot. And this time the guy says, c'est pas possible. And I said, oui, je sais que c'est possible. I know it's possible because I've done it before with your colleagues. And he goes, oh, okay. And I thought, so we had a discussion, negotiation, and he let me in. And I thought, I was really upset. And I wanted to go down and say, why did you say it's not possible when I'm standing here giving you the books? And I think some people in France need a little negotiation to get anything done. Yeah. Please tell me why.
I think it's just a Pavlovian reflex, you know?
The old Pavlovian conditioning. Makes
say no.
Yeah.
And then, oh, yeah. But automatically, a French person would say, not all of them, but they would say, no, c'est pas possible.
Yeah, c'est pas possible. So that's interesting because when you're talking about property prices and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of euros, having a negotiation can make a big difference, I imagine.
Definitely, yes.
And are they open, like, when you start negotiating? How does it work? You negotiate with the real estate agent. Yeah, the realtor.
I mean, sometimes there's no real estate agent. Sometimes the property owner doesn't want to deal with a real estate agent.
Because in France, you have to pay quite a lot to the real estate agent, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and it depends on the agency, you know. It could go up, I think, up to 10%, you know, depending on the agency. But that's something that's negotiated between the seller and the real estate agent.
So that's tough because if you say, hey, there's no elevator, I want to negotiate the price, the real estate agent won't want to lower the price and the seller won't want to lower the price. So it's almost like you got to convince 2 people.
Oh, if there's no elevator and my client wants an elevator, I won't even consider that listing. I won't even consider that apartment, you know. I go through maybe not 100 apartments, but lots of listings to make sure that they match my client's criteria. So if it's an apartment on the 5th floor, there's no elevator, and my client said, I want an elevator, I will not even consider that apartment.
Do you have clients who say they want air conditioning?
Yes.
Because that's got to be a problem in Paris.
Yeah.
Because I know especially Americans struggle with the lack of air conditioning in Paris hotels and you know, apartments and stuff like that.
There are apartments that are renovated Airbnb, renovated. Yeah. They look like brand new, perfect for rental and all of that.
Yeah.
They may have air conditioning, but that's not something you should expect in a Parisian apartment.
Or a hotel. Except for the really nice ones.
Yes, yeah.
I heard that it's because so many, the apartments in Paris are so old.
Yes, they are very old.
They weren't built with air conditioning in mind, whereas a lot of the houses in America or Australia or wherever are a lot newer, and they've taken into consideration the summer heat. But here, like if you say to a Parisian, why don't you put in air conditioning? They say, what, for 2 weeks of the year, I need to have a huge...
Yes, and sometimes you need to put them in the window. You need to get approval from the syndic, you know, the other owners of the building. It looks ugly. I know someone who can install, it's like a new technique, and they can install air conditioning without putting the air conditioner in the window. Yes.
What's the new technique? Is it secret?
It's I'm not a technician, but it has to do with water. Okay. I don't know exactly, but air conditioning, you know, if you live in an older building, like 18th, 19th century building made out of limestone, then they will keep the apartment cooler than newer apartments made out of concrete.
Really? Unless you're on the top floor under those zinc roofs, then you're in trouble.
You could be in trouble.
Yeah.
But then if you have trees, also if you're like facing a courtyard with trees, they will keep the air a little bit fresher. So there are, little...
This info is good for people, even if you're coming just to look for a nice hotel to stay in. Do you like going around and looking in the Parisian apartments? Is it a pleasure for you?
Yes.
Have you ever seen any that are just like gobsmacking, jaw-dropping? Yeah?
Very nice apartments, yes.
Whereabouts? Where are the best apartments? 16th?
No.
No?
I mean,
7th? 8th?
Actually, my clients, they don't look for apartments in the 16th usually,
Right.
So
for anyone at home, 16th and 7th, these are the kind of chic, elegant, diplomatic residencies out there. Some would say boring.
Yeah, it's not the more exciting.
No. So where are the cool apartments? What?
Well, it depends on. There are cool apartments everywhere in Paris.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I think what matters the most is the arrondissement.
Yeah.
Where you want to live.
That's true.
And usually my clients, they know Paris already.
Yeah.
And they know their favorite streets. They know their favorite restaurants.
Yeah, that makes a big
shops.
difference. Yeah.
So they have an idea of where they want to be.
Especially if it's a secondary residence. If you're going to be in Paris for 1 month, you want to be near the Ile Saint-Louis or whatever. I understand. Okay,
yes.
Your next point, I thought this was quite interesting. Don't hire the same notaire as the seller's notaire.
Yes.
I remember reading about this in books. A notaire is the, what do we call that?
It's like a real estate lawyer,
right.
basically. But the notaire in France will represent the state.
Right.
So he or she is there also to collect taxes, to make sure that the deed is done properly for their client.
And often it's the same notaire for the buyer and the seller.
It could be the same, but my advice is to get your own notaire. Just like in a divorce procedure, you would prefer to have your own lawyer.
Yeah. And
So
how many people are having, what's the percentage? Do you know? Do most people have the notaire is the same as the seller and the buyer, or what's typical?
My clients, they all go for, my notaire speaks English. She's great. Then the percentage of people who have their own that will have the same notary, I don't know. I don't know.
That's a good one. Another pitfall here, a bonus one that you've written, and I assume your own clients wouldn't do this, but this is something for everybody. Don't pay anything directly to the realtor upon making an offer. Have you seen this happen?
Yes, that happened to me not so long ago, where my client was ready to make an offer, and the realtor said, in order for me to present your offer to the seller, you have to give me a check.
Okay.
That's totally illegal.
So what happened?
So I refused. I refused.
Okay, so they didn't give the check. That's good. But so they wanted a check to go in hand to the seller?
They wanted to make sure that they would get their commission paid. But the commission is paid by the notary. Basically, when you sign a deed, that's when the buyer gets the keys to the apartment. At the same time, the funds are transferred to the realtor, to the seller, by the notary, by the notaire, not directly from the buyer to the realtor. That's totally illegal.
Do you see a lot of greed? That sounds like a greedy story by that real estate agent.
Well, yeah, it's, I guess, anything, you're selling apartments. It's sales business, like selling cars, like selling, some people are greedy.
Yeah.
It's not to say that all realtors are dishonest or, far from that, but some of them, like in any business, they will try to do dishonest things.
Right. We got to wind things up. Time's running away from us very quickly. It always goes quickly. But I had two questions. One, have you seen that show on Netflix with the real estate agents to like the mega wealthy in Paris? Have you seen that show?
No, I haven't watched.
I've seen a bit of it, but it's worth it for just the amazing apartments, that they like multi-million dollar. Goodness me. And then the other question was, I wanted just to say who you are. So if people want to find you, you don't have you're not a real estate agent because you don't have property to sell.
Yeah, I don't sell anything.
Yeah.
I don't have any property to sell.
You're a buyer's agent.
I'm a buyer's agent. To me, it's a conflict of interest to claim that you're a buyer's agent vouching for the buyer and at the same time having something to sell. To me, it's a conflict of interest. So no, I don't have anything to sell. No property.
You're a buyer. So I understand. Someone comes to you and says, Christine, I want to buy an apartment. And you say, I'm here to help you.
Yes.
And then do you charge them or you take a cut or what is the...
Basically, I'm paid by the buyer.
Right.
Only by the buyer.
I see.
But again, usually it's compensated by the fact that I try to negotiate the price down. So usually, whatever I negotiate down is at least my fee.
There you go.
And also something that I did not mention is the fact that there is no multiple listing service in France.
Yeah.
Unlike in the United States where there's a multiple listing service. Here, if you want to buy an apartment, you have to go through each real estate agency. There are some websites that, will list various, like Se Loger or... but they won't be comprehensive.
Yeah. In other words, if in Australia, I know that you go to a real estate agent, they can have the same house for sale that the other competition down the road is selling as well, whereas that doesn't happen here at all.
Here it happens. Like some real estate agencies will have exclusivity over a property and some will not have exclusivity, but they won't have the entire list. I have a tool where I can find all listings with specific criteria. Like if my client says, I want to be on the third floor, I want to have this view, I can search specifically through listings that would potentially match those criteria.
Right. Okay. I'd love to see you negotiating. Could we go to like the market, the flea market together? I bet it would be fun. Christine. But that'll have to be for next time. This time, you have been Christine Bacoup-Tidas from Tomet, Paris. Everything will be linked below. And thanks so much for coming on and shining a light on buying an apartment in Paris.
Thank you, Oliver. My pleasure.
No, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.